What's up guys, just Josh here. Welcome back to the most viewed series on this channel, album rankings. Today we're going to be ranking the albums of Chimaira. So I've been into Chimaira for a little bit. I started listening to them whenever the whole Machine Head controversy was around, about how they ripped off the riff from Chimaira's song Cleansation in their song Volatile on their album Catharsis. So I checked out the song Cleansation to see what all the fuss was about, and I ended up loving it. And I checked out the Impossibility of Reason album. I like that too. I didn't really listen to them for a while, but after a while I came back to their albums and listened to the rest of them. And now here we are. Going to be ranking all of their albums, and I will be including This Present Darkness. I know some people wouldn't include that because I guess it's an EP, but I love it too much not to put it on this list. But anyways, let's get into the ranking. And at number 8 we have Crown of Phantoms, my least favorite Chimaira album, released in 2013. Their last album. The band sadly broke up shortly after this album came out due to lineup changes and a bunch of different factors. And speaking of lineup changes, this album had a completely different lineup. Like no classic members on this album whatsoever besides vocalist Mark Hunter, who is the only constant member throughout Chimaira's history, the only one who stayed in the band the entire time. But if you guys listen to Chimaira, you know that the classic lineup is Mark Hunter on vocals, Rob Arnold and Matt DeVries on guitars, Jim LaMarca on bass, Anders Herrick on drums, and Chris Bacuza on keyboards. So yeah, Mark Hunter is the only classic member on this album, and due to that, it doesn't really feel like Chimaira to me, honestly. It feels a bit weird. The production is very strange as well. It's pretty compressed, and you can hear audible distortions in the music at times. A good example is in the opening song, The Machine. That riff starts off the album. The riff sounds a lot like Living Through Me, Hell's Wrath by Pantera. But that's neither here nor there. When the song kicks in with all the instruments, you can hear like this distortion, like this boom. And yeah, the bass guitar and bass drum are sort of inaudible throughout the album. And Mark's vocals sound a bit strained, a bit tired at times. But anyways, some of my favorite tracks on this album are The Machine, No Mercy, All That's Left Is Blood, I Despise. The title track is pretty good, and Kings of the Shadow World. And at number 7 we have the band's 5th album, The Infection, released in 2009. This one took a bit more of a slower, groovier approach. Not saying it's bad at all, I actually like this album quite a bit, but I would like a little bit more of those, fast tracks, those thrashy tracks to contrast a little bit. Really the only fast songs on this album would be On Broken Glass and the bonus track Revenge. But again, not saying it's bad, I just would like a little bit more of the fast tracks to contrast those slower, groovier numbers. But anyways, yeah, lots of great riffs, lots of great drum work on this album. Some of my favorite tracks are The Venom Inside, Frozen in Time, Coming Alive, Secrets of the Dead, On Broken Glass, and The Heart of It All is actually a really good closer. Very good instrumental track. Kind of harkens back to Implements of Destruction from Impossibility of Reason, and the bonus track Revenge is pretty killer too. And at number 6 we have The Age of Hell, the band's 6th album, released in 2011. This would be the last album to feature guitarists Rob Arnold and Matt DeVries. And yeah, like I said, Crown of Phantoms really suffered for that, man. Rob Arnold and Matt DeVries are just killer guitarists, and definitely a major factor in Chimaira's signature sound. But anyways, there's a lot of fast tracks on this album. This album's pretty damn good. Some of my favorite tracks are The Age of Hell, Clockwork, Time Is Running Out, Year of the Snake. Born in Blood is definitely my favorite track on this album. The Phil Bozeman feature is just fucking fire, man. Anyways, Some other good ones are Powerless, Trigger Finger's pretty good, and the bonus track Scum of the Earth and Your Days Are Numbered are pretty good as well. Overall, very solid album, and my 6th favorite. And at number 5, we have the band's 3rd album from 2005, their self-titled album. And yeah, this album is pretty, I'd probably say one of their darker albums. It definitely brings in a lot of thrash and death metal influences, even more so than The Impossibility of Reason did. Drummer Kevin Talley did a great job taking the reins over from Andals. Lots of furious drum work from Kevin on this album. Some of my favorite songs on this album are Nothing Remains, Save Ourselves, Inside the Horror, Salvation, Everything You Love, Pray for All. Lazarus is pretty good too, and the bonus tracks, Threnody, Clayton, and Malignant are pretty interesting as well. There's also a really good cover of Disposable Heroes by Metallica on the special edition of this album. Overall, very good album, and my 5th favorite. And at number 4, we have the band's 4th album, Resurrection, released in 2007. This album is really good. The fast tracks on this album are, well, fast, and the slower, more experimental tracks are very, very interesting as well. Some great tracks on this album are the title track, Opener, Pleasure and Pain, Worthless, 6, absolute masterpiece, 6. No Reason to Live is good, The Flame is great, Needle, Empire. Empire is a really interesting track. They kind of experimented with a bit of black metal on Empire. So yeah, overall a very good album, and this definitely shares a lot in common with the self-titled album in terms of the thrash and death metal influences, and it really makes for a strong, powerful release. And at number 3, we have Chimaira's debut EP, This Present Darkness, released in 2000. And not a lot of people would probably include this on their ranking since it is more of an EP, but like I said in the beginning of the video, I just love it too much not to have it on the list, even if it's not technically an album. But this is back when Chimaira was more of a nu metal band. Their first 2 releases, This Present Darkness and Pass Out of Existence, lean more towards nu metal. But they are pretty heavy albums, to be honest, very heavy for nu metal. But I still hear lots of Korn, Slipknot, and even Machine Head influences in these 2 releases. Yeah, like I said, these albums are pretty damn heavy. Lots of crazy drum work, lots of double bass, very busy drum work. Something that's pretty rare in nu metal. I mean, Slipknot had a lot of crazy drum lines, but I don't really consider them to be nu metal per se, aside from their self-titled debut album. But anyways, I'm rambling. Lots of great riffs on this album. The guitar tone is just fucking dirty as hell. And Mark Hunter's vocals are absolutely haunting. He just screams his head off on this album like a man possessed. And it makes for a very chilling album. Very raw and brutal album. But anyways, my favorite tracks are This Present Darkness, Painting the White to Gray, Divination, Sphere, Lend a Hand, and Gag. And at number 2, we have Chimaira's debut full-length studio album, Pass Out of Existence, released in 2001. And like I said, for This Present Darkness, this one kind of follows the same theme of This Present Darkness. It's more of a nu metal album. It's still really heavy for nu metal, as I just stated. And the band doesn't really like this era too much. I'm sure that they're proud of these albums for what they did for them, you know, getting started as a band and getting them off the ground and stuff. But yeah, not their favorite era from what I've heard. But I'm sure they're still proud of them. But anyways, everything that I was going to say about this album, I pretty much already said in my description of This Present Darkness, so I don't really need to repeat myself. This video is already going to be pretty long, so let me get into my favorite tracks. Let Go, Dead Inside, Severed, the title track, Split, Painting the White to Gray, Taste My, Sphere, Forced Life, and the 14-minute closer, Jade, is really, really good as well. So I like pretty much every song on this album, but those are just my top favorites. But anyways, let me get into my number 1 pick. And at number 1, I really don't think that there's going to be much argument about this at all. But my top favorite Chimaira album is their second album, The Impossibility of Reason, released in 2003. This album is amazing. As I said in the beginning of the video, this was my introduction to Chimaira, specifically the song Cleansation. And man, I'm glad I checked this album out because Chimaira is pretty fucking awesome. So yeah, this album is very, very heavy. It's got more of a groove metal / thrash metal, even more of a metalcore sound. There are still some small elements of new metal on this album, but they are very, very minimal compared to the last 2 albums before this. But man, this album is so crushing. Like, the production is just fucking awesome. This album has one of the best guitar tones I've ever heard. Just very, very tight and crisp and lots of bite, and it's just crushing, dude. Absolutely crushing. Andals just kills it on the drums. This album is truly a masterpiece. So my top favorites are Cleansation, the title track, Pictures in the Gold Room, Power Trip, Pure Hatred, Dehumanizing Process, Crawl, Stig Murder, and the closer, the 13-minute epic, Implements of Destruction, is amazing. So yeah, guys, that's my ranking for Chimaira's albums. If any of you guys out there are Chimaira fans as well, please let me know your ranking of their albums down in the comments section below. And like I said, man, I want to get back on the album ranking grind. Be on the lookout for my next album ranking, which will be on the Cattle Decapitation albums. That's going to be coming out in a few days. Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out.